So my name is Joe DeRozier. I'm one of the lieutenants in our jail, our operational lieutenants. I've been with the Sheriff's Office for the last 16, going on 17 years. I've done the vast majority of my time in the jail. I have a jail sentence, 15 plus, and I'm still working on it. I love the jail, which is why I haven't left. So we hope to give you an overview of the jail and then get into that deeper dive during the question and answer.
My name is Sergeant Brad Briscoe. I've been with the Sheriff's Office since 2012. In the bio, you may see it says I have 21 years of service, which I wish I had, but I'm not quite that veteran yet.
And he looks that young.
Yeah. I joined when I was 7. I got my junior deputy badge sticker, and I counted all that time. But I've also been in jail my entire career. I started as a non-commissioned staff member up in our central control room. From there, I went commissioned in 2014, and I just recently got promoted to sergeant here in October. But yeah, I love the jail. It's really awesome to work in a place where I get to take care of people in their lowest moments and turn their lives around, hopefully, and provide resources for them. But we'll talk about kind of what that looks like here throughout the presentation.
Okay, so today is about community, and it's about information. I'm not a big stage person, so I'm going to challenge our cameraman, and I'm going to walk around and talk with you guys down in our community. Because this is our community, and that's what we're talking about. So let's talk about the jail and a little bit of the jail history. So the jail was built in 1977. Pointed at the, is it on?
I have no idea.
Technical difficulty? There we go. So our jail was built in 1977. So it's been around for a while, and it's gone through a couple of different growth and expansions. At the time it was built, 160 inmates. 160 back in 1977. Today's population, I just checked it before I came up to stage, our daily population right now, 1,024. That's where we're sitting right now. That's currently in custody at the jail. Does not include our alternative sentencing programs or our pretrial programs, and that's about 930 individuals. Those are individuals who could be in our custody if these programs didn't exist. So there's a lot that we've done with the jail to kind of control our numbers. You'll see on here that we've got a couple different growth spurts in here in 2004, 2008, 13. That growth was partly because the valley's growing, and we needed to expand what we do at the jail. The other big part of that was we wanted to provide better services to the individuals that are in our custody. Here's a great example. When I started in 2005, our medical unit that served all the jail, 10 beds. Now think about this for a second. 10 beds for individuals who are coming into jail, detox issues, substance abuse issues, mental health issues. We had to triage and say, okay, which of the 10 individuals coming into custody right now need to be in our medical unit? So guess where everybody else went? I'm a dorm officer. I work at a unit. One of our housing units houses 92 inmates. I was doing a basic medical function with individuals who were detoxing from substances or dealing with mental illness in my unit. Okay? So I got really good at communication. I got a really good education on detox issues and mental health issues. We had an expansion in 2008. Our medical unit now is 84 beds. It is a primary care facility in which that we have clinic, we have exam rooms, we have a dental room, we have housing for individuals who are in the midst of detoxing or in the midst of a mental health crisis, where we can work with them, get them through those difficult times, and get them out into general population. So it's a primary care, it's urgent care, just like you would go to a doc in the box. And it's also a hospital that has some hospital type facility function. Again, we expanded the jail because we needed to serve our community, the jail, better. The next slide.
Yeah, and you look at kind of the trends. We expanded about every 4 to 5 years, and now it's about 8 years since our last expansion. So As you can see, our community is still growing, and we're getting pretty full. The numbers are getting pretty high, even though through our efforts of trying to keep people out of the jail system and get them into programs or alternative sentencing stuff, we're kind of reaching that point again. So we're kind of looking at that here in the near future. But
So when we talk about what we do in the jail, we have policies, procedures, we have regulations and things that we have to follow. But if you want to get to the core of what we in the jail do, what our focus is, it's our pillars. We call our jail pillars. And that's safety of staff, inmate well-being, security of the facility, and meeting and exceeding stakeholder expectations. Those are the 4 things that we try to do every day with every interaction we have, whether we are interacting with an inmate, whether we're interacting with law enforcement, whether we're interacting with members of our community. Those 4 pillars are what we focus on. When we talk about stakeholders, everybody is a stakeholder. Our inmates that are in our custody, they are stakeholders. They have a role, and we need to make sure we exceed their expectations. Now that may sound weird, saying, well, it's a jail. How do you meet or exceed their expectations? Well, there's a lot of rules and regulations in managing the jail, and we got to make sure we meet all of those rules, but these are also human beings. And we want to treat them like human beings and give them the respect they deserve as human beings and meet their expectations while they're in custody, okay? So we really focus with these 4 pillars with our deputies from day one, and we continue to talk about this on a regular basis throughout all levels of our bureau, from our captain all the way down to the newest deputy, to our central control operators, to our program staff, to our warehouse staff, to our kitchen staff, all of them, everybody that works. And again, think the jail as a small city, okay? 1,024 individuals in our city today, not including the staff. And a lot of the things you heard from police services that they do out in the community, we do a lot of that same stuff inside our community. And that's how we look at the jail, is that's our community, and we're going to police our community. Just like Meridian polices theirs, just like Garden City polices theirs, Boise and Ada County. Okay?
yeah, and it is important to know these pillars because a lot of people think of jail and they think about like the show like 60 Days In, and that jailers' roles in our community is to punish those that get arrested and whatnot, but it's really not. And we truly care about the people that we're supervising and nursing back to health, whether they're coming in off detox or mental health issues, or even if they're just in a low place in their life where they made a mistake. And we're not there to judge them. We're not there to punish them. We are truly there to help them. And that's why, again, we stress these pillars to every single staff member in our facility because it's truly what we believe in. So we just want to talk about some common misconceptions about the jail. Like I said, people see TV or shows and they think, you go to jail, you're going to get abused, you're going to get beat up. And we're here to tell you that's not the case at all. So starting with the first one, a common misconception that we always have is that jail staff controls who's arrested and where they're released. It's important to know that we have absolutely no control in the jail. Our deputies have no control on when people are released, what their charges are, when their court dates are. That's all handled throughout the court services process. So we can give them information like, hey, yeah, you're scheduled for court on this day or whatever that looks like, but in terms of getting them released or whatever that looks like, the jail staff has no control. We're just there to maintain the safety and security of the facility and everyone that's inside, and that's the only thing we have control over. Another misconception is all inmates are housed together, which is absolutely not true. Again, we've prioritized the safety of the inmates in our facility, so if we have someone that's extremely violent, we're not going to just throw them in a housing unit with everybody else, right? We have people there for like a trespass or DUI, something that's very minor, or just a mistake they've made. We don't want to house them with someone that's going to physically assault them, right? So we don't just throw everyone in a group housing unit and say, hey, good luck, don't get beat up. Like, that's not how that works. We make sure that everyone's safe. We have a special process of classifying each inmate to determine where they're going to be housed, and we'll talk about that here just a little bit later. But another misconception is inmates are treated poorly. Again, you see that on TV shows, or movies, whatever that looks like. But I can tell you we strive to make sure that all inmates are respected, treated as human beings. We provide 3 meals a day, medical, mental health services, regardless of ability to pay the copay that we have. And again, we pride ourselves on making sure that we help people leave our facility and making sure they don't come back again. That is our main goal. We don't want people to come back again. We don't get any benefit out of people being arrested and coming into our facility. So it is our goal to make sure that we take care of them, treat them with respect, and then leave them better than when we found them. Another misconception, inmates are locked down all day. And again, this is dependent on your housing unit and your behaviors. There are units where people are locked down 23 hours a day, but at a very minimum, they would get an hour out a day to go out to rec, use the phone, have video visits, order commissary. There's no unit in our entire facility where everyone's just locked down 24 hours a day. If they are, it's because their behavior dictated that, and they were violent towards staff or other inmates, and we weren't able to safely get them out of their cell.
And when we say lockdown, we're not talking that they're isolated away from everybody. It means that they don't get to come out with other individuals because they're a threat to other individuals or to staff. So we have to monitor that behavior again. We have a requirement to keep people safe while they're in our custody. And the last thing we want to do is take an individual who is violent towards others and put them in close contact with other individuals. And so we do have a process in which we do keep them. It's called, again, it's not locked down. They still get all the medical. They still get everything else that everybody else gets. It's their out time is different. Now that doesn't mean that they're going to stay that way the entire time they're in our custody. We reevaluate that on about every 30 days. Our classification goes in, and again, based upon good behavior and things that we're seeing in there, they have an opportunity to move through the housing units. Our whole goal with the housing units is we want to give inmates the ability to do as much as they can while they're in custody, but some of those things you have to earn. You have to show good behavior to get those. They're not, again, whether it's more TV time. Hey, commissary is a big thing in the jail. Being able to order ramen noodles and candy bars and stuff like that, that's huge. I like candy bars, so it would be a big thing for me. But you get more access to commissary depending on your behavior and good habits. So it's how we manage the inmates. We reward them for good behavior versus punishing for negative behavior.
Last we have up there is there's no assistance available to inmates in our custody, which is absolutely not true. And we'll talk about a lot of those resources that we provide. But again, like I said, our main goal or intention for people that come into our custody is to give them the resources or come up with a plan for when they're discharged to make sure that they're successful when they get released, right? Because they're going through some big changes in their life if they've been charged with a crime, right? There's some things that happen in terms of freedoms or abilities to do certain things. And we want to make sure that they don't go out into the community from our facility and set them up to fail just to come back again, right? That's not what we want. So we'll talk about the assistance that we provide in our custody here as we go along.
So some of the challenges that we have, again, one of the things, again, when I talk to individuals who have family members that are in custody, a lot of it is they're asking specific questions about that individual, about what's going on with them in jail, what's going on with their court case. Understand we have a legal requirement to protect that individual's information. They are adults in our facility. So I can't share information. We cannot share information about them personally, about what's going on with their court case, or what's happening in the jail. So often when I get a phone call from a parent, and yeah, I do get phone calls from parents of adults in the jail. My child is in custody, and this is what I'm hearing. That's great. I welcome those phone calls because it gives me an opportunity to do some education. And vastly what I found out, and you've heard this, is it's the individuals calling because they have a valid concern, and with a little bit of education and talking to them, here's generally what happens, is kind of how I couch that. Individuals, when they come into custody, this is what happens. When they go to medical, this is what happens when they go to medical. So I'm helping them understand the process and letting them kind of connect some of those pieces, but I'm not giving personal information on this individual or about their case because, to be honest, I really can't verify who's on the other side of that phone. They say they're a parent, they say they're a loved one, I don't know. But I'm going to take that opportunity to educate them, and most of our sergeants and deputies are going to do that as well.
And that's not just limited to medical information, mental health information, but even disciplinary information, their housing information. We keep that private because, again, it's a possibility to jeopardize their safety and security. If someone knows exactly what housing somebody's in, they want to try to plan something to harm that person, it's easier for them to do that. So it's really hard when we get calls from concerned family members like, hey, the only thing I can tell you is that he's safe or she's safe and that we're taking care of them. We know of these issues. We're diligent about making sure that we have that. But any information to provide, we can also use to help that member as well. But it is difficult just to be real vague with them. Like I can tell you the basics of what this looks like and kind of how we handle this, but I can't give you real specifics on this individual. But Let's talk about some cultural influences. So that's huge in a jail facility, right? Because in a jail facility, you lose a lot of your freedoms and privileges that you would normally have on the outside. So even when it comes to just cultural things. Another example too about cultural influences that we have specifically in a jail is like one example that comes to mind is like women in a position of authority. So we've had issues with that with people that just come from a different culture, right, where women don't have a prominent role in terms of leadership or giving direction or asking questions or even being able to speak until being spoken to. So there's big cultural influences in terms of like a jail facility and what we're able to do to accommodate those types of things. We have to allow our staff members to be all operate the same capacity, right, regardless of their race, gender, whatever that looks like. So those are challenges we try to overcome. We'll talk about religious services here in just a bit and kind of the things we do to help accommodate that kind of stuff. And languages. So obviously, people who aren't proficient in English, there's a lot of questions that gets asked while you're in jail, and there's a lot of things. And jail's a place where a lot of people have to kind of care for themselves in terms of requesting items they think they need or might want. So the language part of it can be an issue. To help combat that, we have bilingual deputies, just like the PSB. So we have deputies that speak all sorts of different languages, from Spanish to Swahili to Russian, Ukrainian. If they're on duty, we'll use them to help translate. If we don't have anybody on duty, we use the BP translator line, the vetted translation line that they have, so we can help them through the process. We don't use other inmates to translate. There's just some ethical issues, and again, when it comes to protecting information from other inmates, especially if it's like medical or mental health information, we don't want other inmates getting that information from that other inmate. So even if they're related or speak the same language, we won't ever use an inmate to translate for another inmate because it's just a possibility of sharing information that we don't want them to share.
It goes back to just like what our police partners were saying, that they don't use family members or limit that. We use the same reason here is we want to make sure the information that we're gathering and that we're passing on is accurate. And again, we don't want that information to be shared with other inmates who could misuse it.
I broke it.
Oh, he broke it.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to go over, so this is kind of a quick process. We're going to run you through what it's like to come into our jail from start to kind of finish. It is a quick snapshot of this. So we're going to start with the booking process, and we're going to go all the way through each one of these things so you kind of have a real basic understanding of what it's like to be housed in our facility all the way up through release. So we'll start in booking. So when you come into booking, there's some things to think about. You come into booking, a patrol officer has brought you in. There's a set of procedures that we're going to go through. First thing we're going to do is we're going to do a pat-down search on you to make sure you don't have anything on you. If you do have stuff on you, personal items, we're going to take all that. And not that we're going to take it from you because we want to keep it. We don't want it into our jail because it could harm somebody else or you or one of us. But the other reason we collect all that stuff is so that when you leave, all that stuff is all neatly packaged so you get it all back. Okay, it's important that whatever you come into jail with, that you get that back when you leave. So you're going to go through our booking process. They're going to ask a bunch of questions. Part of that is to gauge what your needs are while you're in custody. So if you have medical concerns, mental health concerns, if there are some religious concerns, we want to capture as much of that information up front to start those processes moving in the right direction. So you go through the initial questioning, you go through a body scanner. Again, we want to make sure, believe it or not, people try to sneak stuff into our jail. Stuff that is not meant to make people healthier, but we've seen drugs and weapons and stuff try to make it into our facility. It's dangerous for officers, it's dangerous for the inmates. So we're going to scan you. We'll do a fingerprint and mugshot. That's a requirement. We got to do that. It's part of the booking process. You get screened by medical staff. They're going to ask you some more in-depth medical questions because we want to know what those medical concerns are so we can continue to treat if you're being treated. And if you're not being treated for something, we want to get that process again started quickly. We'll I make some phone calls. The phone calls are free from booking. If your charge comes in and it has a bond attached to it, that is your opportunity to start making phone calls to bond out. Again, we don't want to keep people in custody that can bond out. If you can do that, great, we'll help you with that. We have a list of bond companies that you can contact, again, free of charge on the phone. We also have the sheriff's office. You can do a cash bond. There's a fee with that, but you can bond out. And if you can bond out, great. You don't get changed in, We get you, process your release paperwork, and we walk you right back out to our lobby, and we give you back all your personal items. Okay? If you can't bond out, if your charge does not have a bond and you have to go to court and meet with the judge, then we're going to house you in our facility. If the bond is high and you can't make bond right away, you got to take some time to come up with the money, we're still going to house you so that you're not waiting in our booking area very long. But you will still have an opportunity to bond out. Even after you go to court, that first arraignment, when the judge sets a bond, you will still get an opportunity to try to bond out as well. But that's kind of how our booking process works. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in booking. It is a very busy time, and there's a lot of questions that people, when they come in, ask. Our booking deputies are really good about trying to answer questions as best they can. Now, we are not going to be able to answer anything that happened out in the field. And we've had individuals say, well, that didn't really happen this way, it happened this way. And that may be, but we can't change what's already happened. Once you're in our facility, you can only be released when either by bonding out or a judge says you can leave. Those are the only two ways.
Yeah, just go a little more in-depth on a few of these things in terms of searches. Like Lieutenant said, regardless of what you're there for, you're always going to get a PAT search and have someone do a PAT search. But something they also need to know is based on the reasons they came in, or if there's suspicion they may have something on them, we might have to conduct a strip search, which is kind of an awkward topic to talk about, but it's something that's important to know. Depending on why you're there, if it's related to drugs especially, they may have to go through a strip search, which is very intrusive and kind of embarrassing, right? Because they have to remove all their clothing from a deputy. They'll give them some instructions to make sure there's no contraband on the person. So that is something they need to at least know about. If they're asked to do that, it's a part of the process. It is a type of search depending on the situation. When we're talking about collecting the personal items and information, that's pretty much all the items on that person. That could be like as small as a ring, earrings, belly rings. It could be something tied in their hair. Regardless of its meaning or purpose, even if it's related to a religious purpose, we'll remove all personal items because we do make accommodations when they're housed to hopefully allow them to continue to practice their religions, but they'll be using materials that are approved by our jail only, not personal items, if that makes sense. The body scanner, it's important to know it's a very safe machine. It's not like a high x-ray beam of, I'm going to get cancer if I go through this type of thing. It's a very low grade scanner, just as a basic outline of the body, again, just to make sure there's no contraband in. But just to be aware, it's not a crazy dangerous machine if they're scared of what that may look like. But yeah, and then again, being screened by the medical staff. We're not just asking medical and mental health questions, but we're going to ask them questions about their past history, if they're going to be vulnerable in custody, or things that we can do to accommodate and make sure they're more safe while they're in our custody. So kind of like what Lieutenant was saying, you already kind of covered a lot of this in terms of bonding. There's two different ways to bond. You can do it by yourself by posting cash bond, either through your own personal card when you come in, or if you have a family member come drop it off, or a friend. You just pay the full amount. They can also be released by a judge the next day, depending on what the charge is. If they deem they're good to go, and release them on their own recognizance, give them some instructions on what to do when they get released. Or if they lower the bond, give a bond, and then they can bond out on the lower bond. Or if there was no bond originally with their charge, set a bond, they can bond out on that. There is a sheriff's fee every time they bond out. So if they are going to try to bond out, let's say it's a $500 bond, the sheriff's fee is $25, so it would actually be $525. So just know there's a fee associated with the bond itself, so it's going to be a little bit more than the actual bond amount. And if anything, if they can't pay the full amount of bond on their own, they can use a bail bondsman company. All the phone calls to bail bondsmen are free. We have a list of all the local bail bondsmen that can help them out. Usually they pay about 10% of their bond amount through a bail bondsman, depending on what it is and how much it is.
Understand, bail bondsmen are for-profit organizations. They're there to make money.
Yes.
So there will be a fee associated when you work with a company outside of the sheriff's office. So let's talk about video arraignment. So we talked about if you can't bond out, you'll end up being housed in our facility, either to get a bond set on your current charge if you didn't have one, or to maybe lower your bond, or hopefully be released on your own recognizance. It's important to know we do video arraignment Monday through Friday throughout our entire facility for every single inmate. And again, to know this isn't like a trial, right? So when they go to video arraignment, it's usually done the next day if it's a weekday.
And the only purpose of video arraignment is to discuss the charges and make sure the person understands what they're being charged with, what their rights are throughout the entire court process, and then hopefully set a bond or release them on their own. So we're not there to discuss any of the details of the report or if anything's factual or anything like that. It's literally just to let them know what they're being charged with, make sure they understand the rights, hopefully set a bond, and in some minor like misdemeanor cases, they can put in a plea agreement and say guilty, okay, well you served a day, credit time served, we'll release you today. So there's some times where they can put a plea agreement in there, but that's very rare. During video arraignment, if they don't speak English, that's something we will address in booking, and we'll put in an alert on them saying, hey, they need a translator with them during this court process so they can have a translation part so they understand what's going on. There's also a public defender that will be there with them to represent them on their behalf unless they have a private attorney that comes in that day. But at the very minimum, we'll have a public defender standing by with them in video court.
Okay. So housing. We have a variety of housing units in our facility, all the way from what we call our dorm facility, which is, sorry for those that are virtual, but for us in the room, look around this room, see how big this room is. This is about the size, maybe a little bigger than one of our dorm facilities. So our dorm facility holds 92 inmates. It's what we call direct supervision. In the back, if this was the unit, in the back we would have 2 stories where the 4 tiers where we would have individuals, that's where their bunks and their showers and their restrooms would be. This would all be considered day room area where they would come out, watch TV. There would be tables where they could play games, do video visits with family and friends, talk on the phone. All that's in the day room. Now we call direct supervision. We have 2 styles, direct and indirect supervision. Direct supervision means I have an officer, there's a deputy in that unit with them. So if this was our unit and you were all inmates, I would be the deputy, or actually he would be the deputy in the unit, and he would be like the police in this community. So his role is to make sure everybody's getting along, that we're meeting the requirements of meals are being taken care of. If there are issues that somebody has in the room, he's the one that they would go talk to get that addressed initially. And then from there, he would run it up the chain of command if there was an issue that they weren't able to handle. Now that's the vast majority of the individuals that we have in our custody live in a setting like this. And we have male dorms and we have female dorms. Okay. As your security level or as your custody level goes up in level, which means more dangerous, more concerning to other inmates, to us as staff, to the public coming in, you have different housing units, and now we let you come out in smaller groups, and you tend to spend more time in cells. So maybe now you're living in a cell with 5 individuals in a 6-man cell, and you get to come out of that cell with a smaller group for 4 or 5 hours a day to use the phone, to use the tablets, for your meals and all that. And then the rest of the time you're back in living with your roommates in that area. All the way up to where we have areas where one person lives in that cell by themselves. And we do that for a couple reasons. Again, because we deem them as a danger because they've already shown by behavior that they're not getting along well with others, or they are in a situation where they don't feel comfortable being around other individuals. And we want to keep them safe. And so they've actually asked to be housed by themselves. And so if we can accommodate that, we try to do that. But all that's based on a classification level. So we have a group of individuals that's their sole purpose while they work at the sheriff's office is to look at each individual, ask a bunch of questions about past criminal history, about where they've lived, other charges, what their behavior's been like, if we know what they've been like in our facility. And they put this into an objective classification system, which means it's a process. They put it in there. There's kind of a formula that they work through, and it comes out with a classification number, and that number is where you get housed based upon that number. We use an objective classification versus a subjective, because if it's a subjective, I could say, you're wearing black today. I don't like black. You're going to be in a single cell. I like your scarf. I'm going to put you in dorm today. That's subjective. Okay, we want objective. We want to take data, look at that, and then put them in the most appropriate housing location, housed with other individuals of that same custody level. So now I'm not being housed as somebody who's here on an FTA with somebody here who's on a rape charge or something significant like that. Okay, so again, a long process, and then we evaluate. You can, again, based upon your behavior and how things go while you're in our custody, you can move up or down. You can live in more restrictive or less restrictive, again, based upon your behavior as an individual. Okay, I'll talk a little bit about our health service unit real quick, because I think it's the next slide as well.
Just to make sure everyone's clear, that there's going to be a lot of questions, especially in the initial part of your experience in jail, through booking, through video arraignment, and then getting classified as a whole separate interview with another deputy. Just know they're not trying to get you in trouble with the questions they ask, especially through the classification service. They're going to ask a lot of personal questions, especially about your background, previous charges, things like that. It's not, again, to get anyone in trouble or collect information. It's strictly to find the best place to house them where they're going to be the most safe and allow the safety for others.
And if there's a language barrier, we're gonna address that with interpreters and with the language line. Okay. Mind your way.
Maybe.
All right, well, we're doing this, our medical unit. So our medical unit's a little bit different. We house everybody in different classification levels in that one unit, not all together. But this is where, again, think about if you go to the doctor and they have to, and they say, hey, we need to admit you to the hospital. We do that at the sheriff in the jail. So if you meet with our providers and like, ooh, we need to monitor this closely, or there's a mental illness that we're concerned about, we're going to admit you to our medical unit, not with the intent for you to live, but our intent is to treat you. And then once we've got you treated and stabilized, then we want to get you back out in general population. We all recognize that it's better to live in community, better to live around other people, even in an environment such as a jail, than to be stuck in a single cell. Okay? We've watched people deteriorate because they live in a single cell. So when we can, we try to get them treated and get them safely back into the community. Now, we don't deny medical for anybody in our facility. Regardless of what money, we have a copay. Again, we're a city. We have a full medical team that's there. So there is a $5 copay for all inmates when they see medical, if they initiate it. So if an inmate says, I need to see the dentist because I have a sore tooth, that'll be a $5 copay, and they'll see the dentist. Yeah, we have a dentist that we contract with. If it's a deputy that says, I think this person over here is struggling with some mental health issues and makes a referral to one of our mental health providers, that's not a copay for that inmate. That's when we initiated, we will pick up that cost, okay? But we have nurses around the clock. We have we have a nurse practitioner and a PA that's on our staff. We have dentists, we have clinicians. We're full service when it comes to our medical unit, and we're continuing to build that as we go. Understand, jails are really the mental health facilities of our day and age. Vast majority of our individuals in custody have some sort of mental health component, whether diagnosed or undiagnosed. And so we are working on our system inside the jail to make sure that we can address those. But again, we run clinic every day of the week. Hey, my wrist is bothering me. I need to go see the doctor. All right, we're going to see a doctor. Now, understand there are some things that we cannot manage in our facility. That's okay. That's a phone call and a trip to the hospital. We will take you either by patrol car, or if need be, if it's an emergency situation, we're going to take you by ambulance to the hospital. Hospital will check you out. We've even had inmates that get admitted to the hospital for a period of time. Alcohol detox is a good one. Somebody who detoxes from alcohol. One of the only detoxes that can kill you if not treated correctly. Causes some significant issues. And we've had individuals that get admitted to the hospital for 3 or 4 days so they can monitor them while they're detoxing. Great. We'll put a deputy in that room while they're there. They get all the medical attention that they need to get. Once the hospital clears them, they come back to us. We finish out their treatment, their detox, and then we get them to general population. Okay?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize the copay thing again. Even if they submit a request for a sore tooth, they can't pay the copay. We don't deny any request, mental health or medical. Training was brought up in the last presentation, so it's something unique to our health services unit as well as there's a specialized team of deputies that are selected to work in our medical units. They get extra training, go to that CIT course, everything like that. Get extra training on recognizing signs and symptoms of alcohol, meth, detox, whatever that looks like, the differences between those two. They're deputies, again, they work those units all the time. They're just the regular teams that come in and out, and it helps build rapport, helps build understanding of people that may come in frequently with mental health issues and understanding, hey, yeah, from a normal deputy perspective, this guy is very angry or aggressive, but really it's underlying mental health issue. We have a good rapport. He's safe to talk to. We can actually go in the cell and address these issues, and they learn who these people are and how best to treat them while they're in our facility. So we do have specialized deputies that work in our medical unit that have to apply to work in that unit and get specialized training to help deal with the issues that they see down there.
That same CIT training that our police partners talked about is the same CIT training that we send all of our medical deputies through as well. So they understand mental illness and how to de-escalate somebody in our community inside the jail. Whether it's somebody in the medical unit or somebody in a housing unit is having a mental health crisis, these deputies can come in and have a conversation and start de-escalating that and get them the help that they need working with our medical team.
Yeah.
Okay.
I broke it again. Okay, perfect. So communication within our jail. Like I said, the jail can be very confusing and kind of overwhelming, and a lot of the things that you request are done on your own accord. We do certain things, like in terms of getting information and stuff for you, but a lot of that stuff will be done through an electronic request form, or it's called the inmate request form, or IRF, or some people call it a kite for slang. So when the inmate can't get an issue addressed with the housing deputy that's in their unit, monitoring the unit, making sure everything is running smoothly, and something outside the unit that they need, they'll submit a request on one of our kiosks, just describing what the basic need is. They're all categorized based on what the request is related to, whether it's religious, medical, dietary, stuff like that. And then it'll get submitted to the right people. We'll have the correct deputy or correct staff member that's associated with that request. They'll type an answer back. Then the inmate should just go back and check in on their request on that kiosk to see what the answers are. So it's...
We gotta wrap it up. Okay.
So that's a part of the process that they'll have to learn. If they have troubles, again, with translation or language issues, we can help them with that. Deputies can submit requests on inmates' behalf to make sure that we're getting them the services they need.
Hey, and again, we try to take everything that we know about the jail and compact it into an hour, and I apologize, we've gone over our time, but I do want to open it up for questions, and then we'll be around for breaks if you want to know more about what we're doing. But at this point, does anybody have any questions on things with the jail, either here or virtually? You have the mic.
I was just curious what the impact of the pandemic has been on the jail in terms of if that has impacted how you lodge or anything.
That's a great question. So if you look on your sheet, you can see what our daily, our annual population, you'll see a dip in 2020 or 2021. That was COVID. So when COVID hit, we did a real big push, and we worked with our partners about who really needs to be in jail and who doesn't. And so we saw a decrease in the population, which was great because it meant that those that were in custody, when they had COVID, we had some space where we could quarantine them, get them through the COVID isolation procedure, and then get them back. We were one of the first agencies across the nation that was doing COVID testing of inmates on their request. We were also one of the first ones that voluntarily did COVID vaccinations for inmates that wanted it. So we were providing all that stuff. And again, COVID is still an issue. Unlike our community out here, when you have COVID, you can isolate yourself. You can't do that if you live in a dorm of 92 individuals. And if you live in a dorm with 92 individuals and one person has COVID, there's a good chance that others are going to have COVID too. So we track all that very carefully. Our medical team is very aware, and they've stayed up on the CDC's requirements and regulations for jails and corrections on COVID. We follow those daily, but we have seen a tremendous drop in the number of COVID cases. Fortunately, we have not had anyone have significant medical issues due to COVID, although we've had some that come down and live in our medical unit due to the COVID complications, but we've managed to get them nursed back to health and back into the general population. Great question, though. Yeah.
How many social workers do you have on staff? And for those who are being released from jail following a substance use related issue, are there any community resources, education, or coordination efforts offered to individuals to receive help or treatment if they'd like to?
Awesome. That's a great question. I might be more of it. We have program services for substance abuse and attend classes to help with that. Whether it's court ordered, they pay for their classes for the substance abuse stuff. We have 4 now social workers.
Three clinical supervisors, or 3 supervisors and 3 mental health professionals and 1 clinical supervisor now.
And we do contract through psychologist, but Carolyn Corbett.
Carolyn Corbett is our nurse practitioner, our psychological nurse practitioner.
But they're on duty every single day of the week, now doing weekends. We'll provide services as requested or if requested by deputy staff. We also have someone in our medical admin that helps with discharge planning. So in terms of getting meds situated outside of custody, finding housing if they don't have housing, or even a transport courtesy ride to the hospital if they're looking to go to the hospital, stuff like that. So we have a discharge planner in our facility that helps inmates with those needs to get those established before they leave our custody as well.
Question over here?
Well, I think you answered mine with that. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect.
I was curious about what you connect people to for continuing care after.
Yeah, and that's anywhere from like giving them a supply of their medication that we prescribed for free, like a 30-day supply to help them continue taking that medication until they can see a provider on the outside, stuff like that. We talk about discharge planning, finding housing, coordinating with other, any group homes, stuff like that outside of the facility that we can get them sent to, all that kind of stuff. But
We've had providers actually come into our facility to meet with individuals prior to being discharged, especially like for housing. If we're looking to try to get somebody in a specialized housing, they'll come in and they'll actually do the application while they're in custody. The more we can do while they're there in connecting to the community, the better chance they're going to stay connected to the community, that portion of the community, once they get out. If we leave it up to them to do, it's kind of hit and miss. So we try to facilitate as much as we can. We have 2 questions right here.
Just curious, if a client was detoxing and had to go by ambulatory to the hospital, does the client have to pick up the cost or the county?
County picks the cost up.
Okay.
Yep. That's, yeah.
Thank you. So the minors and juveniles are also housed in the same place, or are they separate?
So we separate adult and juvenile. So we are just an adult facility. Juveniles are done at juvenile corrections. Interesting thing is, so if they're serving time in juvenile and they turn 18, at midnight when they turn 18, they get transported to our facility. Because we can't house anyone under 18, they can't house anyone over 18. So we go in and facilitate that transport and bring them to our facility.
There are rare cases where they are being charged as adults. They might not be 18 yet, and you get housed in our facility for you charged as an adult. If that's the case, they are separated completely from our inmate population and try to house them like people. They're still allowed to participate in programs, get health care, stuff like that. So they may have interactions with other inmates, but just for life.
Under supervision by a deputy.
We keep juveniles separate.
Yeah, good question. Okay. Any other questions? No more virtual?
How are medications handled, especially for those with mental health struggles? How does this work when they're released?
Okay. So let's unpack that one. So how's medication? So again, we have our mental health providers and our nurse practitioner who can prescribe medications. And so based upon the evaluation, just like you would in the community, if you met with a provider and they said you need to be on medication, we would go ahead and get those medications and start them on that medication. The goal is when they leave, they get 30-day supply. Sergeant Briscoe talked about, they get a 30-day supply, and we get a referral to a mental health provider on the outside. And sometimes even our Carolyn Corbett will see some of our individuals continue that care on the outside. But they do get medications when they leave, and we try to connect them to a provider when they get out so they can continue that.
Yeah, and I can even start from the very beginning when they come into booking and just making sure they tell us all the information, the things they suffer from. They can even bring their own medications in with them, so we can help verify their prescription and get their prescription started faster in a more timely manner, so they don't have to go through any weird phase of time where they're not taking their medications and dealing with any side effects of that. Yeah, I think that was it.
Any other questions? Okay. Yeah.
When they bring in their medications, do they need to be in pill packs from the pharmacy, or are the bottles sufficient?
They need to be in
I'm
the
just
original.
curious.
They need to be in the original bottle. We need to know they need to be in the original bottle with the patient's name on it and the doctor that prescribed it. That allows us to kind of verify all that information. And our medical team will work with them to get the approval to contact the provider and continue working with the medication regimen while they're in our custody.
Yeah. And it's also important to note there are some medications that we just can't give in a facility for abuse purposes that are, there's some mental health medications that are easily abused, and inmates will take advantage of that. So there are some that we don't allow in our facility. And if that's the case, that's what the social workers are there for. We help assess what their needs are and see if we can get them started on a different medication, at least help them throughout their entire process. But sometimes we just can't make those accommodations depending on the severity of the.
2 more questions. One there.
So when people are released, do you guys have any follow-up programs for things like job, to get into jobs and reintegrate back into society? Because I know that that's a big problem with repeat offenders is they get out of jail and it's affected them. They have a felony on their record or whatever, and they have difficulty finding a job, and then they become a repeat offender for one reason or another.
So we don't have anything real specific coming from the jail. Now we have our community transition center, and so if an individual is selected or part of that community transition center program, they would transfer from the jail into that program, and then that program would then help them reestablish themselves in the community, whether it's job, whether it's housing. Again, the 2 things that we've found that prevent people from coming back into custody: job and housing. So it makes sense that we are doing things to help them. So our community transition center is doing that. It's really in its infancy. We just were able to kick that off a few months ago. So we're working that up. COVID put a big kink in allowing us to do that. But yeah, we are trying to work that direction within the jail. And we have case managers that work with them in the jail as well.
Yeah, we primarily set up the services, and then the follow-up comes from other entities throughout Ada County, if that makes sense.
We have one question right here, I think.
My question is on people that are not English proficient, especially refugees.
Yeah.
So if someone comes in with mental illness, how do you make sure that services are continued after they leave the jail? And if they happen to be homeless, how is that handled?
Both of those are huge challenges for our facility, and honestly for our community as well. So 2 things on that one. So let's talk about the homeless situation first. So if there's a way that we can connect somebody, especially with a mental illness, whether it's from the refugee community or, again, any segment of our community, we're going to do our best to try to connect them with a location that at least provides temporary housing or a place for them to stay. We don't ever want to release somebody homeless to the street. However, we are talking about adults here. And if somebody doesn't want help, somebody doesn't want help. We cannot force them to get help. The mental illness component is a little bit different. We can work on that. But if I live on the streets and I'm successful on the street and I get released from custody and I don't want anyone's help, I'm going back to the street. We can't force that. But we do try to help those that need it and want it get connected. The refugee one is a little bit more with the health component. Trying to figure out, and again, we tried our best with interpreters and the language line to figure out exactly what the issue is and how best to address it and monitor that as we go. But it's probably one of the biggest challenges we have in the jail right now that we're trying honestly to figure out, which is while we're here sharing information with you, but we also are trying to get information from you guys and how to help our community better as well. So that would be a great conversation to have down the road and figure out how can we help each other out.
Yeah, this could be simple things. When we know someone's getting released and we have concerns about their mental health or their safety, we'll give them courtesy rides to shelters or even the hospital, or we'll coordinate with our CIT teams if we think they need to be put on mental health holds based on their just safety. If we are concerned that they're not going to be able to navigate on their own once they get released, so we can coordinate with outside resources before they get released. So we don't just release them out into the community just kind of helpless. So if we have concerns, we'll do everything we can. But again, they are allowed, they have the right to make their own choice. So if they deny those services or they don't want that, we can't force it. We do at least talk about it and ask if they need it. That's including like giving them a free bus pass to get back down to where they need to go, or again, courtesy transports, things like that.
Any other questions? Anything online? No, we're good. All right. Again, thank you guys. If you have more questions or things come up, get a hold of one of us.
We do
during the
jail
day.
tours, highly encouraged. So reach out to us if you'd like to come tour the jail. Give us a little more time to explain all the jail stuff. So